Berlin, 1943, 14:20 hours. Anna Keller, 24, an intelligence courier, has a split lip and sore wrists and is standing still while holding papers at chest height, her fingers tight around a lipstick tube as she waits for inspection and keeps her breathing. Even she shifts weight once, steadies herself, and prepares to pass control without delay. Her hand moves to the tube as an officer reaches for the documents. She turns the cap with a practiced twist while he looks down, and she says the papers are complete while keeping her eyes forward. He tells her to stop moving. As he checks the stamp, she freezes her wrist mid-turn and lets the inner sleeve slide a fraction, the coated strip loosening inside without falling. The cap resists and she presses harder. The inner core sticks and she angles it against her thumb. She tells the officer the seal is tight while adjusting pressure. He orders her to hurry as another person steps close. She complies by closing the tube, slowly trapping the strip halfway and setting the latch to release on the next twist. A hand snaps for the lipstick and she tightens her grip. She says it is personal while keeping the papers extended. The officer pauses and looks at the tube. She opens it again as if to show it empty. While rotating the base, the hidden strip advances to the rim. She keeps talking about routine checks as her fingers complete the turn. The strip catches and she taps the tube against the papers. The motion aligns the edge. She tells him to take the forms now while sliding the tube back. He takes the papers and flips pages. She closes the tube with a short turn that locks the strip in the cap seam. The code now exposed only when pressure is applied. A sudden push jars her elbow and the tube slips. She recovers and presses it flat to the page. She tells him the ink smears easily and asks him not to touch it. He pulls his hand back and scans the stamp again. The pressure transfers the code to the page edge without visible change. He waves the papers toward another clerk and asks if the mark is correct. She nods once while keeping the tube steady. The clerk answers that it matches and hands the papers back. She releases pressure and caps the tube fully, the transfer complete and irreversible. A second officer asks what she carries and reaches again. She answers documents only while stepping half a pace forward. The movement blocks his hand and brings the page edge against the tube seam one last time. Ensuring full imprint, he withdraws and tells her to move along. She takes the papers and turns. She says thank you as she walks. Her grip loosens and her shoulders settle. The tube returns to her pocket with the cap aligned, the page edge now bearing the coded message in plain sight to those trained to read it. She passes the exit line and does not look back. The papers remain unaltered to others, and the code travels onward by routine handling. The decision holds and the consequence is fixed. The message delivered through a simple object and a controlled motion without delay or correction. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment. It helps a lot. A clerk bends the page edge and runs a finger along it while speaking to another clerk and asking if the stamp bleeds. He answers no and keeps moving the file. The bend deepens and the transferred code sharpens. The paper is stacked and pushed forward without pause. The file slides to a runner who grips it too tight. The edge creases and pressure spreads the pattern. He mutters to keep the line moving while stepping ahead. Someone tells him to pass it now. He obeys and hands it off. The crease locks the signal into the fibers and prevents loss. A desk hand flips pages fast and licks a thumb. He complains about delays while counting. Another voice tells him to focus. The thumb presses the edge again and the imprint clarifies. The count finishes and the file is stamped through. The stamp avoids the edge and leaves the code intact. A supervisor snatches the stack and taps it square. She asks who verified the mark during the tap. An assistant answers that it matched. The tap aligns the edge perfectly and fixes the pattern. She nods and orders the file routed onward. The order triggers immediate transfer. The file meets a sorter who sorts by touch. He squeezes corners while calling numbers. A colleague asks for the next batch. He says wait and compresses the edge again. The squeeze completes the reveal for trained eyes. The batch moves and the sorter releases. A courier car jolts and the stack shifts. A handler steadies it and tells another to mind the load. The steadying palm presses the edge flat and prevents tearing. The code remains legible and unbroken. The cart rolls on without inspection. At intake, a checker rubs chalk off a stamp and speaks about smudges. Another replies that the page is clean. The rub grazes the edge and removes. Glare the signal contrasts better the checker signs and passes the file forward. A reader trained for anomalies pauses and bends the edge slightly. He says nothing while counting breaths and, scanning, he confirms with a brief nod and slides the file into a separate sleeve. The decision diverts the message safely without alert. The sleeve is sealed and carried hand to hand, each grip firm and brief. Voices repeat instructions to move faster. The firmness preserves the edge and the code stays sharp. The route shortens and the outcome narrows to execution. The sleeve reaches its stop and is opened once the page edge is read and understood. A reply is drafted and timed. The chain completes without noise. The trick holds from first turn to final read, and the result moves forward. A pen scratches and pauses as the reply is signed. The signer speaks to an aide to copy it clean while keeping the edge clear. The aide answers yes and lifts the page by corners. The lift avoids pressure and preserves the signal the copy finishes, and the original is set aside for transfer. The aide folds the reply once and then stops. He says no folds are allowed and smooths it flat. Another hand brings an envelope and asks for sealing. He orders glue only on the flap and none near the edge. The seal closes without contact, and the instruction prevents damage. A carrier receives the envelope and checks weight by palm. He remarks, "It feels right," and slides it into a sleeve. A second carrier tells him to keep pace. He accelerates and keeps grip centered. The edge remains untouched, and the message stays intact. At the checkpoint, the sleeve is opened, and shown the guard asks what route is assigned during the check. The carrier answers direct and keeps the paper. Steady, the guard nods and returns it. The check ends without compression, and the path remains open. A pause occurs at a desk. As a stamp is sought, the clerk says hold and reaches for ink. The carrier shifts the paper away from the pad and asks for a dry mark. The clerk agrees and marks elsewhere. The choice prevents smearing and secures the edge. The envelope is handed to a runner who jogs and steadies his breath. He calls out to clear the way and threads through. Hands a brush nearly clips the paper, and he pulls it tight to his chest. The near miss passes, and the signal survives. At delivery, the recipient opens the sleeve and inspects the edge. He tells an assistant to bring a lamp and not to touch. The assistant complies and holds still. The read completes in seconds, and the meaning is confirmed without debate. A response order is spoken aloud and written down. The speaker tells the room to proceed now and not ask why. The room answers with movement. The order spreads and actions begin elsewhere. The consequence unfolds beyond the page. The original carrier waits and then is dismissed. He is told to return by the same route and does so. The paper leaves his hands and the task closes. The chain ends where it began without trace. The trick is logged as routine handling and no anomaly is recorded. The message has already done its work and moved decisions forward. A simple turn and controlled pressure carried it through. What did you think? Intriguing, right? Watch the video on your screen. I selected it especially for you. See you there.